In the account of the trials that he underwent in the latter part of his life, the last few years of his life, on one account, he has an interrogation, effectively, before Bishop Theodosius in Mysia. And the interrogation begins by the bishop addressing Maximus and saying, "How are you, Lord Abbot?" Maximus replies, "I am as God intended me to be now from before the beginning of the ages." And the bishop says to him, "But how can that be? Look at you. You're in rags, you're in chains, you're in disgrace. How can that be what God intended for you?" And then Maximus begins to expound his doctrine of providence. His doctrine that God brought each of us into being by love, cares for us with love, and wants to welcome us, finally, with love in the kingdom. But Maximus goes into detail, and a lot of the words that we have been puzzling over the last few days come up in this short passage, which I personally think must be based on historical truth, not the author's imagination. This goes on for a bit. And Theodosius comes back and says, but if you're right, then God has surely condemned you, if this is the state you're in now. And Maximus continues to point out that suffering is not just punishment, but can also be a way of purifying. That those whom God wants to call to himself, he purifies, often by suffering. And then Bishop Theodosius rather loses his temper and says, "This is not what we're here for. We are here to get you to agree to the emperor and to the patriarchs over the teapot." And the discussion then continues on that level. And throughout, Maximus retains his calm confidence that he is standing there where God intended him to be from the beginning of time. Maximus' writings, as we know better than many, are complicated, presenting many puzzles to the understanding. But I think that there is one thread that runs through everything, that holds everything together. And it can be summed up in a phrase that occurs in several of the late opuscula. Nothing that is natural is opposed to God. Nothing that is natural is opposed to God. His whole understanding of asceticism is based on our recovering, as it were, the grain of our nature, so that we live in accordance with our logos, the intention that God has for each of us. That is, we begin to act and behave kataphisi, in accordance with our nature, in accordance with our logos. And that seems to lie behind Maximus's fundamental opposition to the Christological compromises for which he was suffering. It could not be that God would save the world, save humanity, by taking on himself a defective humanity. He couldn't do something unnatural in order to save. He could only save us by what is natural, by becoming a human being that is complete and entire, with a human will as well as a divine will. And this seems to me one point in Maximus that is of enduring importance. that can be summed up very simply. And sometimes he does sum it up, really quite simply. The centuries on love seem to me a kind of theme and variations on the idea that God created us out of love, redeems us out of love, and is calling to us to respond to him with a love that will unite us to himself and indeed even deify us. And it is this we've been meditating on for the last few days, and something that we will continue to meditate on for the rest of our life. That nothing that is natural is opposed to God, because everything that is natural is from God, from God's love. And it is through what is natural that we hear the voice of God himself.